Today I'll be reviewing the Adidas Sprintstar Sprinting Spike. I've been using these for about 6 months now in my training as my training spike, so I will be reviewing them, how I found them, and whether I would recommend them. If you're new here, my name's Harvey. I'm a UK-based sprinter and I'm aiming to break 11 seconds in the 100-meter sprint this summer in 2025. Coming off the back of a very successful indoor season where I got a new PB of 7.12 in the 60-meter sprint and making my first county championship final since 2022. Now, throughout my winter training, these are the spikes that I used as my training spike. I do have a pair of Adidas Adizero Prime SP3s as my main sprint spike for the penultimate sessions before races and also during my races. I've recently done a review of them, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. Now, these are the spikes that I bought as my training spike, and the primary reason I have a training spike is because the spikes nowadays tend to have full carbon plates or very close to full carbon plates. If you're running in these in every session, this can be quite taxing on your joints, on your tendons, on your ligaments. You can run into some complications like tendonitis and other injuries. I'd highly recommend having a different pair of spikes, whether it's just an old pair, doesn't have to be anything fancy, but something that's not got a full carbon plate, which allows a little bit less stress on your joints and tendons and hopefully keep those injuries at bay. So my spike of choice this year was the Adidas Sprintstar. Now, the first thing you'll notice is they're super flexible. You know, you get no give if it's got a carbon plate. It would sort of be like that. But with these, you can pretty much fold them in half. So that's what I mean by not the full carbon plate and a little bit more flexibility in them. Because there is a lot less to them, they don't have any foam or bubbles. They don't have full carbon plate. They are a little bit lighter than the Super Spikes. So these are 175 grams. Being a super lightweight spike, this allows you to get a really high turnover and allow your legs to move as quickly as possible. I do think that with the Super Spikes, the added benefit of things like the carbon plate and the foam is worth the extra weight. But something I mentioned in my review of the Prime SP3s is that I found for very, very short distances, things like 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, a lot of my PBs have been hit with this shoe. Now, my theory behind it is they are slightly lighter. There's nothing between you and the ground, no foam, no anything. And I do think that potentially on those first few steps, these are quicker. You do see some of the pros opt for a more traditional spike over a super spike in shorter distances. But anything, 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters, everybody's running super spikes. I think the benefits of them massively outweigh the drawbacks, and that's why you'll see all the pros wearing them. I think, for what this spike is, it's very good. You can pick this up for £70. I picked this up for £70 when it first came out. I think now for this colorway, you can probably get it for about 50-55. I'd always recommend going for previous colorways rather than the latest and greatest because it's the exact same shoe at a discount. Unless you are fixated on a particular color, I don't think it's worth going for the latest and greatest if they've got your size in a previous color. Now, the reason I went for the Sprintstar is because I opted for the Prime SP3s this year, and I like to train in a shoe that is very similar to the shoe that I'm going to be racing in. This is made by Adidas, so are the Prime SP3s, and the way they fit your foot is very similar, and I like that feeling of stepping into a familiar feeling spike when I go to race. I will do some sessions in my race spike before I race, but the majority of the groundwork through winter is going to be done in this spike. As you can see, I've got a fair bit of use out of them, and I think they're great. I mean, they're simple, but, previously when I was running in Maxflies, I had a pair of Zoom Rival 9s or something, which essentially were the cheap spike compared to the Super Spike. I think another area where this comes into play is if you're just getting into athletics or you don't have a massive budget to spend on super spikes, then picking up just a bog standard pair of spikes, no bells and whistles, no carbon plate, no foam. You can get these quite cheap, especially older models. I think this is probably the best shoe to get into athletics in. Not this one in particular, whether it's the Adidas Sprintstar, whether it's the Nike equivalent, the New Balance equivalent, the Puma equivalent. I think having a pair of cheap sprint spikes as a starting sprinter, if you're a younger athlete and you are, your feet are still growing and you're going to be buying spikes more often, I don't think you can go wrong just with a regular pair of spikes. I think if your feet have stopped growing, if you're interested in that extra tenth of a second, extra hundredth of a second, then I think the Super Spikes are going to be your best bet. All of them are very similar. I think probably the Adidas and the Nike are the best in my experience. But at the end of the day, the spikes are going to make a tiny difference compared to what your legs do. You put Usain Bolt in a pair of walking boots, he's going to beat someone that's not fast in the latest and greatest Super Spike. All that being said, though, I think it's a great spike. I'm going to keep using this as my training spike going into the summer season and then racing in my SP3s. And we'll see how we get on, see if I break 11. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video and you'd like to see more reviews of the sprinting equipment I use, including spikes, trainers, timing systems, recovery equipment, etc., then drop a like, subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. And a massive part of my channel is posting my training videos weekly, so be sure to check those out if you're interested. Leave a comment of anything you'd like me to review in the future, and I'll catch you in the next one.